You've prayed this prayer before. Many times. More times than you can count, honestly, and in more ways than you knew how. You've been faithful. You've been patient. You've done everything you were told to do when the answer doesn't come. Trust more, wait more, believe harder. And still, nothing. Not a no. Not a yes. Just silence where an answer was supposed to be. If you're tired of waiting, not just tired, but worn down to something that barely resembles hope, this is for you. Say, you don't have to pretend you're okay with this. Not here. You know the prayer by heart at this point. Not because you wrote it down, because you've said it so many times it has worn a groove into your chest. The same words. The same request. The same ache underneath it all, wrapped in slightly different language each time, as if maybe this phrasing will be the one that finally breaks through. And each morning, you wake up and check, not consciously, not with a formal inventory, but somewhere beneath your first breath, some part of you quietly asks, is today the day? And each morning, the answer is the same silence. The same gray space where a response was supposed to live. You've tried to be graceful about it. You've nodded along when people told you God's timing is perfect. You've written the verse on a note card and taped it somewhere you'd see it. You've prayed through your doubt, prayed through your fear, prayed through the nights when the waiting felt less like a season and more like a sentence. You have not given up easily. And that is not a small thing. But there is something that happens to a person who has waited this long, in this much silence. Something quiet and erosive. You start to lose the thread of what you're even asking for, or why. The prayer starts to feel like a formality, a ritual performed out of habit more than hope. You still bow your head. But the certainty that anything is listening has become harder and harder to hold. And the most painful part, the part you haven't said out loud, is that you're not just tired of waiting. You're tired of being the kind of person who keeps waiting. Tired of the faith it requires. Tired of the hope that never quite resolves into anything you can hold. Tired of telling yourself it's coming when you have no evidence, only a promise that feels thinner every time you repeat it. You haven't stopped believing, but you have stopped being sure that believing is doing anything. That is not a crisis of faith. That is what faithfulness actually costs, when it's the real kind, the kind no one photographs or posts about, the kind that happens in the ordinary silence of a morning with no answer, where you pray again anyway. That kind of faith is not weak. It is one of the bravest things I have ever seen. Here is something worth sitting with. You are still here. After all the unanswered mornings. After all the prayers that seemed to dissolve before they reached anywhere. After every moment of doubt you quietly talked yourself back from. You are still here, still reaching, still oriented, however faintly, towards something you can't yet see. That is not nothing. In fact, it may be the most significant thing about you right now. Somewhere beneath the exhaustion, something in you has refused to fully let go. Not because the evidence supported staying. Not because the silence was easy to interpret as care. But because some thread, thin, worn, almost invisible, held. And you held it back. Lamentations 3 verses 25 to 26 says this slowly, like someone who knows what waiting actually costs. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Not, the Lord is good to those who wait cheerfully. Not to those who wait without complaint, without doubt, without the occasional collapse into frustration. To those who wait. Full stop. In whatever condition the waiting finds them. Your exhaustion does not disqualify you from this promise. Your frustration does not place you outside its reach. The waiting itself, even the ragged, worn thin, barely holding version of it, is the very thing being honored here. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not being punished by the silence. You are in the waiting. And the waiting has a witness. This is not the answer you asked for. But it is the truest thing available to you right now, and it is more solid than it feels. There is a man in the Bible who knew what it was to wait in a place with no windows. His name was Joseph. And I don't want to tell you the version that ends in triumph. Not yet. I want to sit with you in the part nobody frames and hangs on their wall. Joseph had a dream. Not a vague sense of direction. A specific, vivid dream about what his life was going to become. And then, systematically, everything happened in the exact opposite direction. His brothers sold him. He was taken to a foreign country. He served faithfully, built something from nothing, and then was falsely accused and thrown into prison. Not for months. 4 years. While he was in prison, he met a man who was going to be released, the Pharaoh's cupbearer. Joseph interpreted his dream correctly, and the man was restored, exactly as Joseph had said. And before the cupbearer left, Joseph asked him one thing: "Remember me. Mention me to Pharaoh. Get me out of here." The cupbearer forgot him. 2 more years passed. Think about what that silence must have felt like. Joseph had done everything right. Been faithful in the pit, faithful in Potiphar's house, faithful in prison. Had used every gift he'd been given. Had extended himself in hope, and been forgotten by the one person positioned to help him. You don't have to imagine what that feels like. You already know what it is to do everything right, to extend yourself in faith, to finally see something that looked like a door, and watch it close. To wait in a place with no windows, where the only evidence of God is a dream that feels more distant every day. But here is what the text does not skip, and it is easy to miss because it is not dramatic. In all of it, in every stage of the silence, the same phrase appears quietly in the background: "The Lord was with Joseph." Not, "The Lord was answering Joseph." Not, "The Lord was explaining the delay to Joseph." With presence without explanation. Nearness without resolution. The answer was not given, but the companionship was not removed. Joseph didn't leave that prison because the situation became fair. He left because the time came. And when it came completely, beyond anything he had been able to imagine from inside the cell. He couldn't see it from where he was. You can't see it from where you are. But you are not in that cell alone. The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord is with you. Even in this. Even now. Even in the silence that has gone on longer than it should have. Silence is not the same thing as absence. But when you've been waiting this long, the difference is almost impossible to feel. Here is what waiting does to a person over time. It creates a story. And the story the silence tells, if you let it, is that you have been overlooked. Forgotten. That the prayers are not landing, the faith is not working, and maybe, quietly, in the darkest corner of your thinking, you are not the kind of person whose prayers get answered. That is the lie that lives inside extended waiting. And it is convincing precisely because it is unfalsifiable. You cannot disprove it with evidence. You can only choose, one more time, not to believe it. The truth is harder to feel but more real. Unanswered prayer is not evidence of divine indifference. It is evidence of a timeline you cannot see from where you are standing. Joseph's 2 extra years in prison were not punishment. They were positioning. The cupbearer forgot him, but the forgetting was part of what placed Joseph exactly where he needed to be, at exactly the moment Pharaoh needed a dream interpreted by exactly the person Joseph had become. You cannot see what your waiting is doing, what it is building in you, what it is arranging beyond the frame of what you can observe. The silence is not absence. It is preparation wearing a face you haven't learned to recognize yet. Your prayer has not been lost. It has been received by someone who does not experience time the way your exhausted heart does, and who has not forgotten a single word of it. Let's slow down together. Not to manufacture hope you don't currently have. Not to talk you into feeling something that isn't ready yet. Just to breathe. Just to let this moment exist without demanding anything from it. Begin with your breath. Slowly. Not as a technique, as permission. Permission to stop striving for a moment. To stop reaching, pushing, praying harder, believing more strategically. Just breathe, and let your body remember that it knows how to exist without answers. Now, and this may feel counterintuitive, don't try to pray the prayer again. Instead, let yourself simply notice that you are still here. That something in you is still turned toward God, however faintly, however exhausted. Just notice that. Without judgment. Without pressure to make it more than it is. Isaiah 40 verse 31 was written for exactly this place. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Notice the progression. It doesn't start with eagles. It ends there. It starts with walking, with not fainting, with the most ordinary, unglamorous form of endurance, simply not giving out. That is where you are. And that is where the promise begins. You don't have to soar today. You just have to not give up today. That is enough. Take one more slow breath. Feel the weight of the waiting, and feel that you have been carrying it longer than most people would have. That is not weakness. That is a form of faithfulness so quiet it goes unnamed. It is being named now, here, by someone who has not looked away. Close your eyes if you can. And whatever you're feeling right now, bring it. The exhaustion, the frustration, the hope that's been thinned down to almost nothing. All of it is welcome here. God, I've stopped knowing how to ask for this. I've said it so many different ways. I've been specific, and I've been open-handed. I've prayed with confidence, and I've prayed through tears. I've quoted the promises back to you. I've repented of things I thought might be in the way. I've waited, and waited, and waited. And I am so tired. Not tired of you. I need you to know that. But tired of the space between the asking and the answer. Tired of waking up every morning and checking, somewhere below my first conscious thought, whether today is different, and finding the same silence. Hear that exhaustion. Not as complaint, as honesty. As the most unfiltered version of my trust one have left to give. I'm scared the answer is no. And I'm scared the answer is not yet. And somewhere underneath both of those fears is a smaller, quieter one, that I'm not praying right. That something is wrong with me. That the people whose prayers get answered have something I've lost, or never had. Tell me that's not true. Even if you can't tell me why it's taking this long. Even if you can't give me the answer today. Tell me, somehow, somewhere in this quiet, that I haven't been forgotten. That the prayer is still known. That I am still seen. And yet, you already know I'm here. You knew before I opened this. Before I pressed play. Before I admitted to myself that I needed this today. You knew what I was going to bring, and you didn't turn away. That has to mean something. I'm choosing to believe it means something. So I'm not going to ask again. Not today. Today I'm just going to sit in this. With you. In the waiting. Without pretending it's comfortable, or easy, or something I've made peace with. I haven't made peace with it. But I'm here. And I'm still talking to you. And maybe that is its own kind of answer. God, sustain me in this. Not with explanations. Not with guarantees I can hold in my hands. Sustain me the way you sustained Joseph in the cell, with presence I can't always feel, with purpose I can't always see, with a nearness that doesn't require my understanding to be real. Let me walk out of this season, however it comes, however long it takes, and until it does, be with me in it. Just be with me in it. Amen. You have been waiting longer than is comfortable to admit. Longer than you thought you'd have to. Longer than you told yourself it would be, back when the hope was newer and easier to carry. And you're still here. Not triumphantly. Not with everything resolved. Not with the answer finally in your hands. But here, having shown up one more time, having brought the real thing instead of the polished version, having stayed when part of you wanted to close this and walk away. That is not a small thing. That is, quietly, everything. Joseph spent years in a cell with a dream that made no sense given his circumstances. He didn't know what was being arranged beyond the walls. He only knew to keep being faithful to the day in front of him, not because he had certainty, but because he had nothing else left but that, and that turned out to be enough. You don't have to understand the silence to survive it. You don't have to feel the presence to be held by it. Come back tomorrow. not to try harder, not to believe better, just to be here again, in this space where the waiting is acknowledged, where your exhaustion is honored, and where the silence is never as empty as it sounds. And if someone you know is in a waiting that has gone on too long, don't try to explain it to them. Don't offer a timeline or a reason. Just sit with them in it. Send this. Say nothing. Let them know you are not waiting alone. Something in you kept going. Through every unanswered morning. Through every prayer that seemed to dissolve. That was never nothing. That was never nothing.